Why?
It's a pork shoulder.
It says pork butt.
Pork what?
Yeah, read it and weep.
I specifically told the guy I wanted a shoulder.
Well, he played you, bro.
You're supposed to smoke it for us.
Well, do you want to eat pulled pork butt?
No way, dude.
No, I'm just messing. Shoulder and butt are the same in this context.
Let's smoke a pork butt shoulder. So I've already done a brisket and ribs on my Big Joe charcoal smoker, and to me the final big time task for any kind of smoker is pulled pork. Not necessarily in that order because I think this is a little bit easier than a brisket, but with a few smokes under my belt, I'm going to show y'all how I made this. Of course, we're starting with your generic large pork butt. Mine weighed nearly 8 pounds. The thing I like about these is there's virtually no trim work involved. A lot of times the fat cap will be a manageable size already, so the only thing that I'm going to do is just going to score it in a crosshatch pattern. You've probably heard this before, but it just creates more surface area on the fat, which is going to help it render better. It'll also help the seasoning penetrate more, which, speaking of, you need a dry rub for this. Store-bought is fine, but of course I'm going to make my own. I always start with the leftover barbecue rub from my last smoke, which was my ribs in this case. As always, ingredient estimates are down below, but I'm starting with like 2 parts of brown sugar and 2 parts of smoked paprika, and then like 1 part of everything else, and the everything else is going to be onion powder, garlic powder, dry mustard, cumin, celery salt, and cayenne pepper. I have no idea what I was thinking here, but I forgot to do the 1 part of ground black pepper. It's like the most important spice besides salt in smoked meats in my opinion, but either way you're just going to mix that up and that's your dry rub. You can choose to add a binder like mustard or hot sauce and then apply your dry rub and then cook it right away. Or if you're like me and you like to spread your work out a bit, I'm going to make it just a dry brine first. And in this case, you can omit the binder because the dry rub's going to stick overnight. I said I didn't think it was necessary in the ribs video, and I think it's also not necessary here, but it's a little more necessary in my opinion. I would definitely do it every time for a brisket, and then whenever I have the chance for a pork butt. I always keep my salt separate from my rub so I can be more precise with it, and I'm first going to salt my pork shoulder. Get a very good coating of it because you have to account for all the meat that's inside that you can't reach at the moment. Then you can do the same with the dry rub. Coat all sides and the crevices and the nooks and also the crannies. And then if you're dry brining, I'm just sticking this on a wire rack over a foil lined baking sheet, and that goes into the fridge overnight. You could also do 2 nights if you want. But anyway, on cooking day, I'm going to prep my grill. I'm going to remove all the accessories inside so I can access the charcoal. You can use whatever's left over to help you fuel, but I'm going to add some more charcoal briquettes here. I've really liked these for low and slow cooking like this. I'm also going to add in my smoking wood, and that's going to be a few large chunks of hickory, and then I just have these smaller apple chips that I'm just going to scatter around. I'm also going to fill my chimney about 3/4 of the way so I can get some really hot coals to start this. I'm going to light that, and these briquettes light really fast, so in about 15 minutes they should all be ready. You'll notice when the white ash is covering them on top, they're ready to go. So dump that over your unlit coals and then close this up and let it start coming to temperature. I keep all the accessories still out for now so that the heat can rise to the top of the dome. But after a good 10 minutes, I can start building my grill how I want it. I'm doing the double indirect method, which a lot of people do for slow smoking like this. So the 2 heat deflectors go first on the bottom, then my X accessory rack, and then my pizza stone on top of that. The stone is the second level of indirect, which is going to block the heat from drying out the bottom of our pork butt. On there, I just add one of these aluminum drip pans to keep things a little bit cleaner. Then my 2 grill grates, which I have to clean off with the brush. Then I'm going to take my pork butt and first affix one of these meter thermometers in it. One of these wireless thermometers, or at least a probe thermometer, is really important for this. You want to get accurate and live readings of your meat without having to disturb it. It's going to help you cook it better and get to the right temperatures and be sure of what you're doing. I'll link this meter one below. I'm not sponsored, but it's really nice and it goes to an app on your phone. Just make sure it's as close to the center of the meat as you can without touching the bone. So that gets laid in the center of the grill, and then I'm going to close up and start trying to come to temperature. I've been having better luck, or just maybe getting better at using this grill. There's a lot of heat burning at first, so you have to choke most of it off and make really small slits in the top and the bottom of the grill. And even though the heat reading might shoot past what you want it to, you just have to let it sit there and it'll come down eventually. I was shooting between 250 and 275 to smoke this, and within a few minutes of playing with the vents, it started to settle there, so I'm becoming more comfortable with it and realizing that it is a patience game. I eventually set the levels to about here for most of the cook, and it stayed pretty stable. Having that meter is really nice though, because I can check whenever I want and make sure that things are still good. So all you have to do here is let this sit and come up to about 160 Fahrenheit, which will take a few hours. All I'm going to do is every hour or so come in and spritz with this half and half mixture of apple cider vinegar and water. Helps you develop a nice and crispy and tasty bark. Other than that, just make sure your temperatures are settling and being what they're supposed to be. Mine took a little longer than anticipated. It took about 5 hours to reach this 160. Yours will vary. But if you're satisfied with the bark here, just like a brisket, it's a good time to wrap this up. I just have a couple sheets of heavy duty foil that I'm going to wrap this in. And for extra flavor, I'm just putting like 4 tablespoons of butter and a little bit of brown sugar on top. Helps make a little braising liquid to flavor the meat even more. I cover that all the way with foil, and then this goes back onto the grill. And my goal here was to bring this up to 205 Fahrenheit just like a brisket, but it was about at this point that I realized that I didn't have enough fuel in terms of charcoal in the bottom, and my grill temp was slowly starting to dwindle. So I just went ahead and made the executive decision to do the same thing I did with my brisket, and it was to bring this inside and put it in the oven. I figure most of the smoke flavor is going to get into this before I wrap it in those first 5 hours, so it shouldn't hurt to bring this up the rest of the way in the oven. I set my oven to like 285 Fahrenheit because the thermometer was telling me that it wasn't actually 275 when I set it to that. And again, this just sits and cooks until it reaches that 200 to 205 Fahrenheit. This took another 3 or so hours to reach that temperature, which again was more time than I was anticipating, but you can never fully guess what you're going to get. I'll throw out my 2 halves of cooking on my meter app just so you can see what I got. When it comes out, it's best to rest this for at least an hour. All the rendered fat and juices would come spilling out if you tried to break into this now, which is not great. So if you have a cooler, it's good to put that inside of there so it retains its heat. I don't have a big enough cooler for this, but a really good alternative is your microwave. Once that hour to 2 hours is up, it's ready to eat. I actually made this on Labor Day, so I brought this over to my sister's house because we were having dinner there, and I could not pass up this opportunity to shred this with my hands. It's going to be super hot, so wear some gloves for a little insulation and also for cleanliness. That shoulder blade bone should just slide right out of there, which is really cool to see, but it's really satisfying to see a tough piece of meat break down into these really thin shreds that are super tender and lovely and juicy and all the things you want. You can make your own barbecue sauce. I have a recipe for that in my ribs video, which I'll link. I wasn't really feeling that this time, plus I got this errant bottle of barbecue sauce from the store. Figured I would just use that. You can also taste this to see if it needs more salt if you didn't add enough before cooking. But you got this smoky shredded pork that you can really use for anything. It's fine to just eat like this with barbecue sauce, or you can crisp it up in a pan or under the broiler and make tacos with it. And you can just add it to anything else that you're cooking because it's a really neutral flavored piece of meat, just the right amount of fattiness and just super tender. But if you're trying to smoke something, this is a really good idea. Everyone does it for a reason. A long day of waiting, but then you can eat on this for several days for the rest of the week. I didn't have time to film a taste test for this. I chunked most of this into the freezer because I had a trip I was going on, hence the no video last week. But rest assured, this came out amazing. It really speaks for itself. Hopefully you learned a little bit from this video. At the very least, if you have trouble smoking like I did at the beginning, then just stick with it because you will get better. I'm a pretty slow learner when it comes to most things, but even I'm getting better at this. But what else would you like to see me cook on my Big Joe? That's going to be it for me today. Thank you guys for watching, be blessed, and I'll see you next time.